BBC has finally admitted that it's been using unreliable and inaccurate figures for the number of dead in Gaza. I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti. Following a complaint about the BBC News at 10 back in January 2024, the broadcaster has now admitted figures it used in a report were misleading. One viewer complained that the report gave an inaccurate impression of the number of civilians killed in Gaza by failing to make clear that the figure it quoted included combatants as well as civilians. At one point in the report, the wording said that the number of civilians killed in Gaza had been huge, very nearly 24,000 dead, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, many of them women and children. But people have been complaining for months that the figures being used by the BBC are those given out by Hamas, defined as a terrorist organisation in the UK and around the world by many countries. The figures they issue are simply unreliable, and that's been shown again and again by statisticians who've proven that even within themselves the figures are inconsistent and don't add up. So the BBC should have known better than to use these figures at all, even attributing them to Hamas. The BBC gets to mark its own homework, so to speak, and complaints made about its coverage are judged by, well, the BBC, rather than Ofcom, the independent body that judges other broadcasters' news broadcasting. Even the BBC's own editorial complaints unit decided that in this case the BBC had fallen below its usual standards of accuracy and the complaint has been upheld. Of course, this decision's been buried somewhere on their website that nobody looks at in the complaints section. In fact, the only people that look at that part of the website are the people that made the complaint. However, this is an extremely important moment because it marks the first time that the BBC, to my knowledge, is admitting that it's been using bogus figures for casualties in the Gaza Strip. Figures issued by Hamas which have been proven again and again and again to be inconsistent internally, inaccurate and unreliable. The BBC was forced to admit that the passage gave the unintended impression that the figure from the Hamas-run health ministry consisted only of civilian dead, and this is the important bit, whereas it also included combatants. The ratio of civilians to combatants is vitally important, especially for people who are trying to establish what they think of the validity of the war and the validity of Israel's methods of carrying out that war. War is always ugly, and civilian deaths are tragic and sad wherever they happen in the world. But the BBC, by using Hamas's figures, which failed to distinguish between combatants and civilians, has been perpetuating the idea that Israel has been indiscriminately killing civilians, women and children in particular, when there is no evidence to show that from the statistics released by the Gaza Health Authority, a wing of Hamas itself. Those figures have been debunked. They've been shown to be inaccurate at the very least and inconsistent, and on that basis, no responsible news broadcasting organisation should be using them unquestioningly. Instead, they should be rigorously attacking the figures to try and establish the truth, because it's important that we all know the truth. Of course, the BBC did fact-check Israel's figures when it claimed to have killed 10,000 Hamas terrorists. But as far as I'm aware, it's never done the same to Hamas's claims. Now, in this decision, they've at least admitted that using Hamas's figures was inaccurate and would mislead viewers.